Hello everyone, welcome to my nature diaries. Sometimes it feels overwhelming when we have to choose or make a decision, especially when it comes to sketchbooks. I'm going to be sharing my personal experiences with these sketchbooks, and hopefully it will help you be able to make a selection when you're starting your nature journal or any kind of art journal as well. Of course, these are just my opinions, but hopefully it will help you again in that decision-making process. My first tip is to start somewhere. My love for sketching really started to develop when I was creating these bullet journals. I love the idea of being able to design my own planners, so I decided to use this particular book because it was inexpensive and I thought I would be able to experiment with it. As I began using this thin paper, I realized that I wanted to do more than just put in a simple drawing or sketch. As I continued to create, I began to experiment with Tombow markers, and then I would use Tombow markers with a brush pen, so you can see that it would bleed through on the other side. After working in about 3 of these planners, I realized that I really wanted to just draw, sketch, and paint, so I went into my supplies and looked to see what kind of sketchbooks I had, and I remembered I have this one. I bought this with the idea that I would use it as a travel journal because I wasn't sure exactly what I wanted to draw. I also was able to get this on sale, so it didn't cost me very much money, and I looked at the back and it did include watercolor. It was about this time I realized that I wanted to start a nature journal. That's something that I've always wanted to do, and it combines my love of nature, hiking, and drawing as well. Even though this paper is thin and lightweight, I'm always surprised at how well it holds up to not only watercolor, but pen and ink. Personally, I think this is a great beginner nature journal. If you are relatively new to watercolor, I think this could be a great first step. My second tip is to try watercolor washes. In my opinion, watercolor should not feel overwhelming, especially when we are nature journaling. Our primary goal is to record something we've seen, to make observations, to write some information, so it shouldn't be getting caught up in our watercolor skills. The main thing is to focus on those pencil drawings or ink drawings to be able to illustrate a simple plant. I wanted to show that even if you don't have a watercolor sketchbook or journal, which I didn't have for a long time, there are definitely other options out there that can work just as well. Even though this isn't a dedicated watercolor journal, the advantages to this particular sketchbook is that because the paper is so thin, there are actually 128 pages that are in the sketchbook. This makes a sketchbook like this, even if it's a little bit of an investment, a budget-friendly beginner sketchbook. To be honest with you, I would use this at any level because I really enjoy the paper and the quality of the actual book itself. While the paper can't take heavy scrubbing or lots and lots of watercolor layers, it does fine with 2 or 3 light washes. This also makes it a perfect sketchbook to throw in your backpack, which is what I often do while I'm on the trail. The paper texture as well on this is smooth enough for a fine tip fountain pen. It's not ultra smooth, but it works great with my fountain pens and my dip pen. It's also worked really well with pencil, since a lot of times I do pencil in some of my sketches first. The actual page color is buff, cream, or off-white, and I like that antique kind of look, especially with a nature journal. You can see that now I'm finished, how thin again the paper is, but on this other side there's no ghosting, there's no bleed through. It's really a nice heavy duty paper. The only thing that I've ever seen happen with this paper is that sometimes if you use graphite, that it'll transfer from one page to the other side, but that's only of course if you are using graphite. The landscape mode is perfect for featuring these tall plants. I also tried color pencil in it, and it was my least favorite because I just couldn't get fine enough details. However, that could be my mistake. I even Mod Podged these little leaves in, and if you look over on the other side, you can't even tell whatsoever. I also used graphite in this as well, and it turned out nice, just like the handbook promised. I would definitely like to do some more black and white sketches in it. The sketchbook also handles ink beautifully. I'm just doing a little bit of a demo with this Tombow marker. And what I love about Tombos is that you can use them kind of in the same way as a watercolor pencil. You simply draw in the details using either end or the fine tip like I'm doing here. In this case, I'm layering the marker over watercolor paint that I've already put down. This is a great option when you are working small and you need a little bit more control. Maybe your brush isn't just quite doing it. Feel free to take either watercolor pencils or Tombow markers and a water brush or a paintbrush like this and just spread out that ink. This is the only Handbook & Co. sketchbook that I have ever owned, and I have to again say that I would use this again. I would purchase this another time, probably in a larger size. I would love to hear your thoughts on it and what you particularly like about it. It does have a linen or cloth cover, which can get dirty. However, I do keep that paper cover or wrapper on it. I still would rather pick that than a pleather cover, which would get brittle and crumble over time. My next point is to consider inexpensive sketchbooks. One of the advantages of nature journaling, at least to me, is the flexibility that we have with our art materials. I've seen online where Canson gets really a bad reputation, but it's really an okay watercolor paper, especially again, if you are a beginner and you just want to kind of try it out and see if it's something that you think you'll continue to do. Working in inexpensive sketchbooks like this gives us the option to have freedom to be able to just jot down whatever it is that we want to jot down. We can put in ideas, we could make finished drawings, we could practice layouts that we might want to put into a nicer sketchbook down the road. I like to use these types of sketchbooks for practice. I like to be able to have several of them so I can take them with me when I'm going out. I can put in random sketches. I can do a layout like I'm doing right now and just see how I like how it looks on the page. It might just give me ideas, so when I go to put it into a nicer sketchbook, then I already have an idea what that's going to look like. This inexpensive sketchbook doesn't do great when it comes to any kind of scrubbing or having heavy washes because it's not really set up for that. It's a thick paper. However, it is mostly meant for just simple line and wash if you want it to really shine. I most probably won't be making any kind of fancy backgrounds or painting large swaths of watercolor washes or color on it because it tends to be streaky and not look that great. As long as you're not expecting amazing pro results with this paper, it is totally fine again, even for a finished nature journal if you want, but I would definitely recommend it for practice sketching, quick watercolor washes, for anytime you see something outside and you don't want to focus on how it's looking like it has to look finished, but you just want to experiment. I think this is a great option, especially for beginners. I have a Canson XL in a large size that I have almost filled up, and I've used it for all kinds of different practice watercolor techniques or just trying out different layouts again and ideas or sketches. And I love it for using it for that because I'm not spending so much money. It's not going to break the bank, of course. So I'm here to give you permission to go ahead and use a sketchbook like this, whether you want to use it for practice or you want to use it as a finished journal. It's not a bad little choice, and you can see how this layout turned out. I really like it, and you could make this your whole nature journal if you wanted. Even though this is like a medium type of thickness for paper, the nice thing about it is that it still holds the color on one side, and you can see there's no bleeding or ghosting on this other page that I did. I would love to hear your thoughts on how you feel about Canson XL. Do you have a love or hate relationship with it, and why or why not? This leads me to my next point. Choose a sketchbook with a good binding. You still don't have to spend tons of money to be able to find a sketchbook or nature journal like that. You can find something like this Arteza one. I believe I bought this in a pack of 3. It has a nice hard cover, and you can see in the back there is a vinyl or see-through envelope, and that makes it really great, I think, especially for nature journaling. A lot of these sketchbooks were created with urban sketching in mind, which is kind of interesting, so I think it works just equally as well for a nature journal. Another budget-friendly version, for me at least, is using our local craft store's brand. You can see that it's perforated, has a spiral, but it's also made in Italy. There is some buckling that's happened because I use a lot of heavy washes on it. However, I have enjoyed it, using it as my nature journal of trees. If you watched one of my recent videos on how to start a garden journal, then you will recognize this Hahnemuhle sketchbook. I have been wanting to try this brand for quite a while, and I've been pleasantly surprised at how well it is put together. It is not their premium watercolor paper, so just keep that in mind. However, I will try to link that one. That would be the next sketchbook that I would get if I were to purchase this one again. Overall, I think it's been great because the sketchbook itself is constructed well. I was able to stand and draw with it, which is really nice because I often have to squat or stand up when I am nature journaling or drawing outside. The paper being a bright white really helps the ink especially to stand out, and I felt like it worked pretty well with my fountain pen. It also worked great with my micron markers if you don't use fountain pens. Even with a fine tip, I noticed that it glided really well over the paper. What I liked about it the most, though, is the fact that because the paper was so white and these zinnia flowers, if you're not familiar with them, they are a vibrant color. No matter what color they are in, they're almost neon. They glow in the garden, which makes them so beautiful. Because of the white pages in this sketchbook and the paper itself, I feel like I was able to really capture the bright color of these flowers. If you are interested in painting flowers especially, or anything that is brightly colored, I'd highly suggest looking into this particular sketchbook or one that has white paper like this. The paper itself is not super heavy, it's a thinner weight. However, it did hold up really well again to the multiple washes that I put on it, and I did start out with lighter washes with a decent amount of water, but I went back and added obviously more color but with less water to it, and it did super well. This is not one of those scrubbable papers. Again, you don't want to be able to scrub anything, it will pill. However, I was able to also lift off any kind of color that went over the lines easily, as long as I caught it pretty fast while I was painting. When you paint in a sketchbook that is a better quality one than the previous one we were talking about, which is that Canson XL, you will find that you are drawn to draw and paint in it even more and more. Thanks so much for being here, and if you haven't already, please subscribe. I'd love to have you part of this channel. Like the video if you do, leave a comment with why, and share the video. That helps me so much. Also, you can follow me over on Instagram at my_nature diaries. Thank you. I would also recommend this particular Hahnemuhle sketchbook as a really good beginner sketchbook. It's small enough that you can probably get it filled out. The paper is decent quality, and I believe this was under $20. My biggest encouragement to all of you out there is to not let a small budget or fear of wasting paper or whatever it is to keep you from especially nature journaling. I especially love the art side of a nature journal. I love the creativity of it. I love the paints, the colors, the expression. So for me, I can use a lot of these different style sketchbooks and they work out great. I would love to hear your thoughts on this brand, Hahnemuhle, and if you don't live in a place where you can purchase these, maybe you could recommend something in the part of the world where you live. Buy a 100% cotton sketchbook when you are ready. When I purchased this sketchbook quite a while ago, I didn't even realize that it was 100% cotton. I like that it was a hardback and a nicely made and constructed journal. But when I started painting in it, I began to realize that 100% cotton is pretty amazing. This is Strathmore 500 series, which is the best of the line for them. And again, this is a cotton, 100% cotton paper, and it is not 300 GSM. I believe it's 200, somewhere in that line. This paper, being more for mixed media, is relatively smooth, which makes it once again great for writing. I use this primarily for light washes. Once again, I'm not going to throw anything too heavy at it. It will pill if you add too much water, but that's not a problem for the style of journaling I'll be using. Using this Tombow marker, I am going to just add some ink on top of watercolor that I just put down. I want to just show you how well it can work. I have not as yet taken advantage of the mixed media elements of this sketchbook. However, I do want to experiment with that in the future. This is another sketchbook that I would highly recommend, even though it's mixed media, especially if you're starting out or even if you've been nature journaling for a while, because the hardback especially does super well with watercolor paint. The pages are more of a bright white, so colors really stand out against that. Overall, I think this is a really good 100% cotton watercolor nature journal to start with. Finally, I have Arches, this travel sketchbook that they put out in hot press. You can also get this in cold press paper. This is really like the holy grail of watercolor paper because it is handmade and it's amazing to work with. As you can see, it is spiral because it's meant for travel. The cover of it is pretty flimsy, thin cardboard, as well as the back one is very thin and flimsy. However, they do add a hard cardboard so you can stand and sketch. What I love about this sketchbook that was gifted to me by some family members, thank you Mark and Steph, is that you can use the best quality paper and really get a chance to experiment with it in your nature journal. It's also relatively affordable depending upon where you're purchasing it. However, keep in mind that it is not bound well or archival in that way, and it only has 15 sheets of watercolor paper. No matter what sketchbook that you decide to choose or create in, I think the important thing is to remember that no matter what, tip number 6 is to just make art. Ultimately, you just need some paper and a pencil, but these sketchbooks do make it a little bit more fun. And as always, I just want you to remember that you are so amazing and creative. Till next time, bye.